She was on the campaign trail. She was pulled out of a car, pepper sprayed, and beaten up by a police officer, and booked in the system, and they wanted to take her hijab off to take a picture. Our community starts to see what their African American brothers and sisters have been facing for many years.
How does the Muslim community respond to racism here in this country?
So here's the thing. The reality is Muslims in this country, particularly the quote unquote immigrant Muslims that came predominantly in the 50s and the 60s, would not have the privileges and the rights that they do were it not for the fathers of the civil rights movement. And here I'll mention in specific Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz, Malcolm X, Dr. Martin Luther King, and other greats of the civil rights movement that really facilitated many of the rights and privileges that Muslims in particular live today in the United States. Regarding the Black Lives Matter movement, here at Dar al-Hijra, when the killing of George Floyd happened, we actually said it's not enough to put out a statement because, statements and prayers we hear all the time, right? Let's go a little bit beyond that. So we actually had a series where we invited scholars on racism, on structural elements of racism, to address both internal racism within the Muslim community as well as the systemic racism that exists in society, so that we can address those elements both within our community and within the larger society. Our goal was to educate, right? Because if people don't understand there's a problem, then they can't really, they don't feel and empathize with those that are facing that problem. I can never understand what a black mother and father have to go through thinking about when their son or daughter son starts to drive, for example, and have to think about what's going to happen if they get pulled over, because simply my skin color doesn't have that. Do I face racism as a Muslim? Absolutely. I can't go through an airport today post September 11th without getting pulled aside. But does that equate to the racism that has been experienced over generations with our African American brothers and sisters? Absolutely not. So what we've been doing here at Dar al-Hijra and the Muslim community generally is we have been working on specific policy items here in our community. So we have worked on criminal justice reform. One of the things that we've worked with through other organizations, faith organizations, is we created a criminal defense, a public defender's office in Prince William County. Prince William County did not have a public defender's office. So we worked with the state to actually put the funds in place to put in an actual public defender's office for people who, did not have the funds to have lawyers. What was happening in the past was people were just having rubber stamped plea deals, and that's not justice. We worked on bail reform, trying to stop cash bail, because that was essentially inordinately hurting black and brown people that were caught up in the system. We've worked with the Commonwealth's attorney, Steve Descano, to really look at policies of how we are dealing with the different communities, and what is policing and how does policing work, and who is ending up caught in the system, and whether it's done equally. We've also worked with the former police chief, Rossler, to look at implicit bias training for police officers. One of our own community members actually is suing the Fairfax County Police Department because she, a young lady who is now a school board representative, she was on the campaign trail. She was pulled out of a car, pepper sprayed, and beaten up by a police officer, and booked in a system, and they wanted to take her hijab off to take a picture. So these things, our community starts to see some element of what their African American brothers and sisters have been facing for many years, and we've been pushing to make sure that because there are African American Muslims, and the reality is they get it both ways. They're African American and Muslim, and they get the double whammy of racism that comes and prejudice that attaches to that.